Kings and queens, lords, lairds and landowners, bishops and priests. Their history is written in carefully chosen text, on parchment and in leather-bound volumes. Tales of power and of conquest. These are not those tales. What these are the stories of the people of this land, of our lives, our loves and our fears, our aspirations and our struggles, our successes and our failures. A people's history, an oral history, told in rich language handed down through the centuries, in song and in rhyme, an articulated echo of identity, who we were and who we have become. And the gatekeepers to this perpetual illumination, our bards. Their role in our cultural cohesion cannot be understated. I present to you today Pagair MacNeill, Bard to the nation of Scotland.
Right. For auld lang syne, eh? And for the future. Well, hello, agus Key Admira Fadge. Hello, and 100,000 welcomes. It's Mishaheen Pagair MacNeill. I'm Pagair MacNeill, tradition bearer, Gaelic bard, and bard in all of Scotland's different languages, because I love the culture and the language and the way of thinking, the paradigm of this ancient nation which has given so much to humanity. And nowhere is that more exemplified than in traditional verse composed by the bards of old from time immemorial. And here today we are at the fulcrum of the very place that could have changed the history of Scotland and the world forever. Sliabh an Chirim, Sheriff Muir, on the hills above Dunblane. And I'm looking here at the mountain of Dumayet, which sees the soles of my feet every week as we still run up the hills. Just like Cuilche of the Fianna, Finn MacCool's men of ancient times. But behind me here is Carnan Rahach, the monument to the Macraes. The Macraes, the valiant clan who stood in the front left of the Jacobite army of 1715. And because there was insufficient cavalry support, they took a serious amount of casualties. But they would never retreat, because that was not in their creed. 12 times they reformed and 12 times they came back. And was it not General Whitman, who was on the side of the English, who admired them for their courage, saying he never saw such a fine line of men standing in perfect unison. And he lamented the fact that they had so many casualties. But the poetry of Sheriff Muir will make sure that this event, like many events in Scotland, will never be forgotten. Oh, we build monuments. We have tour guides. We have all sorts of wonderful things ways in which people can view the history of the country. But what better than from the breath and from the mouth of the bards who were eyewitnesses who lived there at the time. In 1715, there lived in the island of Eigg a man called John MacDonald. He was one of the great Clanranald race. He was known as Ian Tu, Mac Ian, Vic Elaine. That's Ian, son of black-haired Ian, son of Alan. And they couldn't use their second names because they got the postman very confused, since everybody had the same second name. He was what they called a vernacular bard, and he composed many a verse at that particular time, but he was an innovator. See, Highlanders were never stuck in a lay-by. They were always willing to innovate, like the great MacCrimmon Pipers, who took pipe music to its zenith under the sponsorship, the patronage of Charles II, and so was with Ian Tu. Normally, The Gaelic poems that were composed by the clan bards were in praise of their race, of their chiefs, of the valiance of their men, of the history of their battles to help them to stand strong in the face of the strife. But Ian Dhu was to introduce a new convention into Highland poetry. It was called allies, whereby, as you'll hear in part of this song, all the clans of the north were invited to stand together in common cause, even ancient enemies such as the Campbells and the MacDonalds in the same muster roll. And if that was not enough, the nobles of the lowlands were to come and join the cause. And no Gael up to this point had ventured to put such a piece together. This is what we called a brasnahag, or an incitement to war. This was a national call to arms. And the way he constructed this wasn't like the old Gaelic strophic metre, which I'll give a few examples of in a minute. This was a new type of convention called aharan or auran, which was symmetrical metre, whereby the assonances, the vowels, would resound out like an iambic heartbeat. So when the warriors would strike upon their shields, they would hear it and it would stir them up, being reminded of the heroic deeds of their ancestors. Well, this particular poem opens out with an ancient prophecy. And the prophecy stems back to the days of the great and the one and only William Wallace. There lived a man called True Thomas, or Thomas the Rhymer. And according to the oral tradition, he was taken into the land of the She-Yakin, the fairy folk, or the queen of the fairy land. And he was in there for 7 years and a day. And he was given a gift of two things: a tongue that would never lie, and an eye that would see into the future. And he foresaw and he foretold of many things that was going to happen in Scotland's future. He saw the day when a French queen would rule Scotland, who would become the Queen of France as well, our beloved Queen Mary, one of the greatest monarchs we ever had. How tragic her end. One day her son would be the king of a united Britain. And of course that was James VI. But he also foresaw the day when there would be a great battle hard in Achluai, north of the Clyde. And the Gaels would arise from their glens. And Highland culture would have parity, equity with that of the rest of the world, being recognised as a cultural entity. This was Gaelic nationalism, and indeed Scottish nationalism. I don't believe all these lies of history who tell us that the Jacobite cause wasn't nationalist. Was it not in King James's proclamation in October of 1715? He said in his proclamation, quote, "to restore the kingdom to its most ancient liberation and independence." That's what King Jamie said. Oh, it wasn't Scots versus English on Sheriff Muir, it was nationalist versus unionist. That was the battle. So the song opens out with this ancient prophecy of Thomas's, and it translates, "This is the time of the prophecy to be fulfilled, when every noble will arise from their glen, in wild, fierce anger in the service of the crown." And the second verse, "On that account, every prancing horse shall shout for joy. On that account, the English shall be destroyed, and the French, our companions, shall be at our back." Then he begins to enumerate all the different clans. It's a long song, so I'm just going to give you a few verses. "If the MacDonalds should arise," of course the MacDonalds always have to go first. "The MacDonalds should arise, those fierce thunderbolts, those stout lions, whose ancient right it was to use the red hand. My lord, it would be folly for them to fall upon you." I'll give you a few verses of the song. It's called Aur and Nanfinig and Gaelach. This convention was to be repeated by another Clanranald bard in the 30 years later, Alistair MacVeister Alistair, Alexander MacDonald, poet laureate to Bonnie Prince Charlie, who also composed an allies poem, but it was the invention of Ian Dhu MacDonald of Egg. Here it goes. Shishonime Shiranjaravan Tadaganakain Brasmena Manak Fiderova Pahonaram Vertus Nure Yeris Gak Trainer and I hate your glonur Lerun Ferek Ages Gerek Kusherev Shakrun H ma hif na gal tokli hound ach sachush Gurlion varek shengavar gauns isli sund Bisas en ikair chigun taing gav gahun Bin a frank ik non kaumpi gre haun cool the McDonald's Nu de year is klondon no leo en hakarak Na behalve her voor de hun kast ben akarav Look his of na kodak and nors to life yarak Mo goi gumbagod of gaivatosh yagagarev The McLeods Na leo di kampar gan kabal the kurshiel Dreimring o chanetis nan gorshit nan skia Gurnjers voor ook el de kurei grihurt lia Gurn kroa dollar doa the kasagoas gadagadiav The McLeans Klangele han andrel dan hit sound the sun reik Drömakios kun einders kun taing hoshen boy Dreimrig o Tokios ik nak strio kedan plua Simak mirak jirak vidin chingov suas The Camerons Gurlion verlev helm hek ewen lochial Vier kodag anta varag anta saya kadagriav Id mer choda ve mer kodag leis chonak rohian Shimagul sam rus kagnak jul tidov shias The Mathesons Clonig vahan an geirlon hitch train the koldaram Another person yed in beard base of igarak Anaun dol avua the bin krua the lord kanak Bukun you could bemen nu the yed could ferek Nambi I've got trainer the shade is anaum an inch in G the kunya the gun kaun At kokin chakri inner sitchi acher gau Ganjan mo shak nandu gau ikush harin kaun And the last verse says that in common cause we shall stand together and our blades will be over the heads of the strangers. Might sound like a bloody song, but there is nothing romantic about war. But certainly these people lived there at the time and they should know. And of course war bears its tragedy as well. And the Gael, the Highlanders celebrated everything in verse. Birth, death was commemorated, battles were extolled, ancient bloodlines were praised, everything. There were songs for rowing, songs for working, songs for spinning, songs for weaving the cloth. And it was all poetry, and all poetry was sung. But by the same bar, I thought I might give you another one.